The alarm started at 3 in the morning. Earth Standard Time. Commander Jake Harris was asleep in his cabin aboard the Unity when the red lights began flashing. He was on his feet and running toward the bridge before his eyes were fully open. "Report," he said as he stepped through the door. Lieutenant Danny Park turned from his station. The young man's face was pale. "Sir, we have contacts at the edge of the solar system." "A lot of contacts." Jake moved to the main screen and felt his stomach drop. The display showed a wall of red dots. Each dot was a ship. There were too many to count at a glance. "How many?" he asked. "Over 2,000 confirmed, sir. More appearing every minute." Jake had served in Earth's defense fleet for 20 years. He had seen pirates, smugglers, and even a brief skirmish with an alien trading vessel that wandered too close to Mars. But this was something else entirely. This was an invasion force. The communication system crackled. A message was coming through on every frequency at once. Species designation, human. Location designation, Sol system. You have been selected for integration into the Velthari Dominion. You will surrender all military assets. You will accept governance oversight. You will comply within 7 standard cycles. Failure to comply will result in complete planetary sterilization. This message will repeat. The bridge was silent. Jake looked at his crew. Some were frozen in shock. Others were quietly crying. Danny Park's hands shook as he tried to record the transmission. "Get me Admiral Carter," Jake said. "Now." Tram. 3 hours later, Jake stood in the main conference room at Earth Defense Command. The place was packed with military leaders, scientists, and politicians from every nation. At the head of the table sat Admiral Ben Carter, a gray-haired man with calm eyes that had seen too many battles. Dr. Laura Kim was speaking. She was the chief xenolinguist, the expert on alien languages and first contact protocols. Her voice was steady, but her hands gripped her tablet too tightly. "The Velthari Dominion has conquered 47 species across this region of the galaxy," she said. "I have pulled what records I can find from old probe data and intercepted transmissions. Every species received the same ultimatum. Every species surrendered." "What happened to those who surrendered?" asked Grace Mitchell, the Secretary General of Earth's United Council. Laura hesitated. "They were absorbed. Their populations were relocated. Their cultures were erased. Their planets were stripped for resources. Within a generation, they effectively ceased to exist as distinct peoples." The room erupted in angry voices. Grace held up her hand for silence. "And those who did not surrender?" "None have refused, Madam Secretary. In 3,000 years of Velthari expansion, no species has ever chosen to fight." Jake stepped forward. "Then we will be the first." Everyone turned to look at him. Admiral Carter raised an eyebrow. "Commander Harris, our entire fleet numbers 84 ships. They have over 2,000. The math is not in our favor." "I know the math, sir. But I also know something they do not." Jake pointed at the screen, showing the alien armada. "They expect us to surrender. Their entire strategy is built on intimidation. They show up with overwhelming force and wait for their target to give up. They have never faced a species that said no." "Because saying no means death," said one of the politicians. "Maybe. But surrender means death too. Just slower." Jake looked around the room. "I grew up reading history. Humans have faced impossible odds before. We have stood against armies that outnumbered us 100 to 1. We have fought to the last person rather than submit. That is who we are. That is what makes us different." Admiral Carter studied Jake for a long moment. "What exactly are you proposing, Commander?" "I am proposing that we fight. Not to win, necessarily, but to show them that humans do not kneel. To make them bleed for every inch of our system. To become the first species in 3,000 years that makes them question whether conquest is worth the cost." The room was quiet. Then Grace Mitchell stood up. "Commander Harris is right," she said. "If we surrender, we die as a people. If we fight, we may die as individuals, but humanity survives in the hearts of those who hear our story. I will address the world tonight. Earth will not surrender. The vote was unanimous. That night, Jake stood on the observation deck of the Unity and watched Earth turn slowly below. The blue oceans and green continents looked so peaceful from up here, so fragile. His communicator beeped. It was Laura Kim. "I have been monitoring Velthari communications," she said. "They are confused. Their translators keep having trouble with some of our words." "Which words?" "Defiance, resistance, last stand. These concepts do not translate properly into their language. They have words for surrender and compliance. They do not seem to have words for refusing to give up." Jake smiled grimly. "Then we will have to teach them." Behind Earth, the first civilian ships were already gathering. Cargo haulers and mining vessels, private yachts and transport shuttles. Ordinary people who had heard the Secretary General's speech and decided they would rather die fighting than live as slaves. Jake watched them come. A baker from New York had strapped mining lasers to his delivery ship. A grandmother from Tokyo had loaded her passenger shuttle with explosives. A teenage girl from Lagos had hacked her father's cargo drone and volunteered it for the defense fleet. They were not soldiers. They were humans. And humans did not kneel. The 7 cycles had begun. In 1 week, the Velthari would learn why the galaxy should fear a species that had spent its entire existence fighting itself. They had perfected the art of war against the most dangerous enemy imaginable, their own kind. Now they would turn that terrible creativity outward. Jake returned to the bridge and began planning humanity's reply. The world changed in 48 hours. Jake Harris had never seen anything like it. Old enemies became friends overnight. Nations that had argued for decades suddenly found common ground. The American president and the Chinese premier appeared together on a broadcast, shaking hands and pledging their combined forces to the defense effort. Religious leaders from every faith gathered to offer prayers for humanity. Even the criminal organizations quietly donated their ships and resources to the cause. On Mars, Dr. Sam Torres had not slept in 2 days. He ran the largest shipyard in the solar system, and every worker under his command was now operating on emergency shifts. Civilian ships lined up by the hundreds, waiting to be fitted with weapons. "This cargo hauler does not have enough power for a plasma cannon," one of his engineers reported. Sam looked at the ship. It was old, held together by patches and hope. Its pilot, a woman named Rosa, stood nearby with her arms crossed. "I did not come here to be told no," Rosa said. "My grandmother survived a war on Earth. She always said the only shame is not fighting." "Give me something I can shoot." Sam nodded at his engineer. "Strip the secondary life support systems. Route that power to a mining laser. It will not have much range, but at close distance it will cut through armor." Rosa smiled. "Close distance works for me." Across the system, similar scenes played out. Every human with a ship wanted to fight. Even those without ships found ways to help. Factories that once made consumer goods now produced missiles. Universities turned their research toward military applications. Children drew pictures of brave pilots to send to the fleet. The old, the sick, and those who could not fight worked around the clock to support those who could. On the Unity, Jake reviewed the growing fleet roster. They had started with 84 military ships. Now they had over 300 vessels of various types. Most were not built for combat. Many would not survive the first engagement, but every pilot had volunteered knowing the odds. "We have a problem," said Captain Claire Dawson, entering the ready room. She was Jake's tactical officer, a sharp woman who saw patterns others missed. "Only one?" Jake asked. Claire did not smile. "The Velthari have sent another message. They want to know why we have not begun evacuation procedures." "Evacuation procedures?" "Apparently, when a species surrenders, they gather their population in designated areas to make the transfer easier. The Velthari are confused because our people are doing the opposite. They are spreading out, arming themselves, and moving toward defensive positions." Jake leaned back in his chair. "What did Admiral Carter tell them?" "He sent a one-line response. We are not evacuating. We are preparing. Hey, Jake laughed. It was not a happy sound. I bet they did not know what to make of that. They did not. Laura has been monitoring their internal communications. Their commanders are arguing about what our response means. Some think it is a translation error. Others think we are insane. Maybe we are. Claire sat down across from him. Jake, I have been running simulations. Even with every ship we have, even with perfect tactics and incredible luck, we cannot win this fight. The numbers do not work. I know. Then what is the plan? Really? Jake was quiet for a moment. He looked out the window at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, 2,000 alien warships waited to destroy everything he loved. The plan is to make them remember us, he said finally. Every species they have conquered just gave up. The Velthari have become lazy. They expect submission. They do not know how to handle an enemy that keeps coming no matter what. So we die, but we die loudly. We die in a way that echoes. We make them afraid of the next species that might say no. We plant a seed of doubt that grows for 1,000 years. And maybe, just maybe, we hurt them badly enough that they decide Earth is not worth the trouble. Claire nodded slowly. That is a terrible plan. It is the only plan we have. The next day, Nick Bradley arrived at the Mars shipyard. He was a civilian pilot who ran cargo between Earth and the outer colonies. His ship, the Lucky Penny, was old, but reliable. Nick was 43 years old with gray in his beard and scars on his hands from years of hard work. Sam Torres looked at the Lucky Penny and shook his head. This thing should be in a museum. She has a few good fights left in her, Nick said. Just tell me what you need. Why are you here? You have no military training, no combat experience. You could sit this out in one of the colony bunkers. Nick was quiet for a moment. I have a daughter on Earth. She is 12 years old. Her name is Katie. When she was little, she asked me why I fly cargo ships, instead of doing something exciting. I told her that someone has to do the boring jobs that keep the world running. He looked up at his ship. I cannot tell her that someone else has to do the hard jobs that keep the world existing. If I hide while others fight, what kind of father am I? Sam gripped Nick's shoulder. We will make sure Katie knows what you did here. Nick smiled. Just make sure she knows I did not run. On the 6th day, the human fleet assembled in formation between Mars and Jupiter. 340 vessels of every shape and size. Military cruisers flew alongside converted cargo ships. Sleek fighters shared space with boxy mining haulers. It was not a professional navy. It was a family preparing to defend its home. Jake Harris stood on the bridge of the Unity and opened a channel to all ships. This is Commander Harris. In one day, we will engage the Velthari Armada. Most of us will not survive. I will not lie to you about that, but I want you to know something. He paused. 3,000 years. 47 species. No one has ever said no to these invaders. No one has ever stood up and told them that some things are worth dying for. He took a breath. Tomorrow, we change that. Tomorrow, we show the entire galaxy that humans do not kneel. And even if we fall, our answer will ring across the stars forever. They came to make us afraid. Instead, we will teach them fear. The channel filled with cheers and battle cries from every ship in the fleet. The Velthari would learn soon enough what they had awakened. Supreme Commander Keth Voran stood in the observation chamber of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. He had led the Velthari Armada for over 300 cycles. He had overseen the integration of 11 species into the Dominion. Not once had he faced resistance. Until now. Show me what you have found, he said to Subcommander Rethal. Rethal activated the display. Images and data scrolled across the screen. Humans. Strange, soft creatures with only 2 arms and no natural armor. Their ships were primitive. Their weapons were weak. By every measure, they should have surrendered immediately. I have been studying their history, Rethal said. It is disturbing. Disturbing how? They have spent most of their existence fighting each other. They have developed thousands of different ways to kill. They have fought wars that lasted decades. They have destroyed entire cities over disagreements about invisible gods. Kethvoran made a sound of dismissal. Many primitive species fight among themselves before they achieve space travel. It means nothing. With respect, Supreme Commander, look at this. Rethal brought up a new set of images. This is something they call a last stand. When a group of humans is surrounded with no hope of victory, they do not surrender. They fight until every single one of them is dead. That is foolish. Yes, but they consider it honorable. They build monuments to these defeats. They tell stories about them for generations. They teach their children that dying while fighting is better than living after surrendering. Kethvoran studied the images, human soldiers standing against impossible odds, civilians taking up weapons against professional armies. Time after time, the same pattern. Outnumbered, outgunned, doomed. And they fought anyway. This is a flaw in their thinking, he said. A cultural defect, perhaps. But Supreme Commander, they have turned this defect into strength. Their greatest heroes are not those who won easy victories. Their greatest heroes are those who lost everything except their dignity. Kethvoran was silent. In 3,000 years, the Velthari had never encountered such a species. Conquest worked because rational beings chose survival over death. These humans seemed to operate on different rules entirely. What are they doing now? He asked. Rethal changed the display. They are broadcasting on all frequencies. Open channels that we can easily intercept. Show me. The screen filled with human transmissions. But they were not pleas for mercy. They were not surrender offers. Instead, Kethvoran saw humans singing songs together. He saw families sharing meals. He saw soldiers recording messages for loved ones, speaking calmly about death as if it were simply another appointment to keep. One transmission showed a human male playing a musical instrument, while others danced around him. They were laughing. They are laughing. Kethvoran said. We are about to destroy their world. And they are laughing. Yes, Supreme Commander. Our psychological analysts do not understand it either. Another transmission showed two humans who appeared to be mating partners. They held each other and spoke softly. The female was crying, but she was also smiling. She told the male that she was proud of him, that she would see him again, one way or another. Kethvoran had conquered 11 species. He had watched billions of aliens surrender in terror, begging for mercy that would never come. He understood fear. He knew how to use it, but this was something else. These humans were afraid. He could see it in their eyes. And yet they kept preparing to fight. They held their fear in one hand and their weapons in the other, and they refused to let go of either. Supreme Commander, Rethal said carefully. May I speak freely? You may. I do not think these humans can be integrated into the Dominion. Even if we destroy their fleet and occupy their planet, they will not stop fighting. They will hide in caves and strike at us for generations. Their children will grow up hating us and planning revenge. We will spend more resources holding them down than they are worth. Kethvoran turned away from the display. What would you suggest? Complete sterilization. Remove the species entirely. It is the only way to ensure they do not become a long-term threat, and become the first species in 3,000 years to make the Velthari commit genocide rather than integration? Do you know how that would look to the other Dominion worlds? Some might start to wonder if they could resist too. Rethal lowered his head. I understand, Supreme Commander. Kethvoran walked to the great window and looked out at his armada. 2,000 ships filled the void, bristling with weapons that could crack planets open. Against them stood a ragged fleet of 300 human vessels, half of which were not even military ships. The math was clear. The Velthari would win. But for the first time in his long career, Kethvoran felt something he did not recognize. It took him a moment to name it. Doubt. On the Unity, Jake Harris received the final reports. The human fleet was ready. Such as it was, the Velthari have begun moving into formation, Claire reported. They are approaching at standard conquest speed. not even hurrying. They think this will be easy, Jake said. Will it not be? Jake smiled. Easier than they expect? No. I plan to make them work for every inch of this system. Laura Kim's voice came over the communication system. Commander, I have finished the message you requested. Are you sure about this? Send it. Across the void, the Velthari received a transmission in their own language. It was not a surrender. It was not a plea. It was a promise. This is the human species speaking to the Velthari Dominion. We know you have conquered 47 species. We know you have never faced resistance. We know the mathematics of this battle favor you, but mathematics is not everything. You see numbers. We see a choice. We choose to fight. We choose to die on our feet rather than live on our knees. And we promise you this. Destroy us if you can, but you will remember this day forever. You will remember the species that said no. You will remember the cost of our defiance. And you will never be certain that the next species will not do the same. We are humanity. We do not kneel. Come and see why. On the Eternal Dominion, Kethvoran listened to the message 3 times. Then he gave the order to advance. The battle for Earth was about to begin. The first human ships died within minutes. The Velthari opened fire with weapons that turned metal into vapor, and shields into memories. 3 converted cargo haulers vanished in flashes of white light. A passenger shuttle was cut in half by a beam that did not even slow down, and then the humans hit back. Jake Harris had spent the past week studying every piece of data they had on Velthari tactics. They were methodical, precise. They attacked in predictable patterns because predictable patterns had always worked. No species had ever made them adapt. All ships, execute Pattern 7, Jake ordered. The human fleet scattered like startled birds. Instead of forming orderly battle lines, they broke into hundreds of small groups. They darted between asteroids and debris fields. They used moons as cover. They did everything wrong according to proper military doctrine. The Velthari formation hesitated. Their targeting systems were designed for enemies who stood still and fought properly. These humans were everywhere and nowhere, appearing from unexpected angles and vanishing before return fire could lock on. Crazy formation is working, Claire reported. They are having trouble tracking our smaller ships. Good. Phase 2. Nick Bradley gripped the controls of the Lucky Penny and flew straight at a Velthari cruiser. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. The alien ship was 100 times his size, covered in weapons that could vaporize him before he even got close. But the Velthari were focused on the military vessels. They did not see a cargo hauler as a threat. Nick smiled. Katie, this one is for you. He punched the engines to maximum and aimed for the cruiser's engine section. At the last second, he activated the mining laser Sam Torres had installed. The beam cut through the alien ship's exhaust ports, and Nick pulled up hard, scraping along the hull before shooting away into the chaos. Behind him, the Velthari cruiser lost power to its main engines. It drifted, helpless, as human fighters swarmed around it. "Cargo hauler, you magnificent fool," came Jake's voice over the radio. "Nice flying. Just getting started, Commander." Across the battlefield, humans fought with everything they had. Military ships launched coordinated attacks on Velthari weapon systems. Civilian vessels rammed themselves into enemy hulls, their pilots ejecting at the last moment or not ejecting at all. Mining ships used their industrial lasers to cut through alien armor. Even the smallest craft found ways to be useful, distracting enemy gunners or blocking shots meant for larger ships. The Velthari lost 50 ships in the first hour. On the Eternal Dominion, Kethvoran watched in disbelief. His tactical officers were shouting conflicting reports. Nothing was happening according to plan. "Why are they ramming us?" one officer demanded. "They are destroying their own ships, just to damage ours." "The small vessels are suicide attacks," another reported. "They fly directly into our hangar bays and detonate their reactors. That does not make sense. They are dying for minimal gain." Kethvoran said nothing. He understood now. These humans did not fight like rational beings. They fought like animals protecting their young. They fought like they had nothing to lose. They fought like dying was acceptable as long as they took enemies with them. It was terrifying. Supreme Commander, we have lost 100 vessels, Rethal reported. At this rate, we will lose 500 before the battle is over. We have 2,000 ships. We can afford 500. Yes, but we have never lost 500 ships to a single species. Ever. Word will spread. Other worlds will hear that the humans made us bleed. Keth Voran knew Rethal was right. The Dominion ruled through intimidation. If other species learned that resistance was possible, even at terrible cost, the entire system could begin to crack. A new transmission came through. It was the human female, the one who spoke Velthari. Her voice was calm and clear. This is Dr. Laura Kim speaking to the Velthari fleet. Look at your casualty reports. You are winning, but you are bleeding. Every ship you lose is a ship that will not threaten the next species you try to conquer. Every dead Velthari is one less soldier to enforce your rule. You can destroy us. But can you afford to? How many more like us are out there? How many species are watching right now, seeing that the great Velthari can be hurt? She paused. We are not afraid to die. Are you? On the Unity, Jake watched another human ship explode. The pilot had flown directly into a Velthari battleship's main cannon, blocking the barrel just as it was about to fire on a group of civilian vessels. The cannon overloaded and took out half the battleship's weapons array. That was the Henderson, Claire said quietly. Crew of 12, Jake nodded. He had known Captain Henderson. Good man. 3 kids back on Earth. How many have we lost? 67 ships, but we have destroyed over 200 of theirs. The numbers still did not favor humanity. But they were better than anyone had expected. Much better. Commander, new contacts, Danny Park shouted. Coming from behind us. Jake turned to the display. More ships were arriving. Human ships. The colonial militia from the outer settlements had finally arrived. This is Captain Rosa Mendez of the colony ship Hope, a voice crackled over the radio. Sorry we are late. What did we miss? Jake laughed. Just the warm-up. Welcome to the party. 50 more ships joined the human fleet. They were not military vessels. They were colonists, miners, and explorers who had dropped everything and flown as fast as they could to join the fight. The Velthari had expected humanity to crumble after the first wave of casualties. Instead, more humans kept coming. And they were still fighting. Still laughing on open channels, still playing music as their ships burned around them. Keth Voran made a decision. Pull back the forward elements. Regroup at the secondary position. Rethal stared at him. Supreme Commander, we need to reassess. These creatures are not behaving rationally. Our standard tactics are not working. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Velthari Armada retreated. On the Unity, cheers erupted across every channel. Jake did not join them. He knew this was not over. The Velthari still outnumbered them heavily. They were just regrouping. But for one shining moment, humanity had made the greatest military force in the galaxy step back. And that was something no other species had ever done. The battle had lasted 18 hours. Both sides had pulled back to regroup. The space between Mars and Jupiter was filled with wreckage, debris, and the frozen bodies of the fallen. On the Eternal Dominion, Keth Voran stood alone in his chambers. His tactical officers had given him the final numbers. 312 Velthari ships destroyed, another 200 damaged badly enough to require major repairs. It was the worst single battle loss in Dominion history. The humans had lost 89 vessels, less than a third of their fleet, but the numbers were not what troubled Keth Voran. He had seen species fight desperately before. He had watched worlds burn rather than submit. What he had never seen was a species fight with joy. The humans had broadcast music during the battle. They had cheered when they scored hits. They had joked with each other even as their friends died around them. One pilot had spent his final moments singing a song about never giving up. These creatures were not brave. They were something else entirely. Rethal entered the chamber and waited for permission to speak. Say what you came to say, Keth Voran told him. Supreme Commander, our forces can still win this battle. We outnumber them significantly. If we press the attack, We will eventually wear them down. And how many more ships will we lose? Rethal hesitated. Conservative estimates suggest another 400 to 600, almost half our remaining force. To conquer a single system with no strategic value, the Dominion cannot be seen retreating, Supreme Commander. Our authority depends on the belief that resistance is pointless. Kethvorin turned to face his subordinate. And what happens when word spreads that we needed to sacrifice nearly 1,000 ships to take one primitive world? What happens when other species hear that the humans destroyed more Velthari vessels in one day than any other species has destroyed in a century? Rethal had no answer. Kethvorin walked to the observation window and looked out at the distant human fleet. Even now, after hours of fighting, after losing friends and family, they were still out there. Waiting, ready to fight again. I have studied their history, Kethvorin said quietly. Do you know what I found? They have a saying. They would rather die on their feet than live on their knees. I thought it was exaggeration. The kind of foolish poetry primitive species create to make themselves feel important. He turned back to Rethal. It is not exaggeration. They mean it. Every word. They will not stop fighting until every single one of them is dead. And even then, their children will grow up plotting revenge. Their descendants will hunt us across the galaxy for 1,000 years. They are not rational. They do not calculate costs and benefits like civilized beings. They simply refuse to give up. Then what do we do, Supreme Commander? Kethvorin was silent for a long moment. We leave. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Rethal stared at his commander in shock. Leave? You mean retreat? I mean we mark this system as forbidden and never return. Let the humans have their little corner of the galaxy. It is not worth what it would cost to take it from them. Supreme Commander, if we retreat, other species will begin to question us. The Dominion could face uprisings across 100 worlds. Then we will deal with those uprisings. But at least we will have ships left to deal with them. If we stay here and grind ourselves against these insane creatures, we will be too weak to hold anything. Kethvorin opened a channel to the entire fleet. All Velthari vessels, this is Supreme Commander Kethvorin. We are withdrawing from the Sol system immediately. Set course for Dominion space. Do not engage human ships unless directly attacked. This mission is concluded. The Armada began to turn. 2,000 ships, the greatest military force in the known galaxy, started moving away from Earth. On the Unity, Jake Harris watched the Velthari retreat on his display. He did not believe it at first. He checked the readings 3 times, certain there was some mistake. Commander, Danny Park said, his voice shaking. They are leaving. They are actually leaving. The bridge was silent for a heartbeat. Then Claire Dawson started laughing. Then Danny joined her. Soon the entire ship was filled with cheers, tears, and disbelief. Jake opened a channel to the fleet. All ships, hold position. Do not pursue. Let them go. He watched the alien armada disappear into the darkness between stars. His hands were trembling. We won, Claire whispered. We actually won. We survived, Jake corrected. But yes, we survived. 3 days later, Jake stood at a memorial wall in Geneva. The names of the fallen were carved into black stone. 89 ships. Over 4,000 dead. He found Nick Bradley's name near the bottom of the list. The lucky penny had been destroyed in the final hours of the battle. Nick had rammed his ship into a Velthari carrier's bridge, killing the alien commander aboard and throwing the enemy formation into chaos. His body was never recovered. Jake touched the carved letters. You did not run, he said quietly. Katie will know that. Behind him, the world was celebrating. Humans had faced extinction and refused to blink. They had made the greatest military power in the galaxy turn tail and flee. For the first time in 3,000 years, a species had said no to the Velthari Dominion, and the galaxy was watching. Laura Kim found Jake at the memorial. I have been receiving transmissions, she said. 3 other species want to establish contact. They want to know how we did it. What did you tell them? The truth. We were too stubborn to know when we were beaten. Jake smiled. That sounds about right. Admiral Carter addressed the United Council that evening. The assembly hall was packed with representatives from every nation on Earth. They came to teach us fear, Carter said. They expected us to surrender like every species before us. They thought showing strength would make us weak. Instead, we taught them something they had forgotten. Some species would rather die free than live in chains. The hall erupted in applause. Far away, in the depths of Velthari space, Kethvoron sat in his quarters and recorded his final log regarding the Sol system. Do not return to this region. The humans are broken in ways we cannot fix. They find strength in hopelessness. They laugh at death. They transform their fear into rage and their rage into action. They are not brave. They are something worse. They are unbreakable. Mark their system as forbidden. Let them have their little corner of the galaxy. It is not worth the cost of taking it from them. He paused, then added one final entry. In 3,000 years, I have conquered 11 species. I have broken empires and silenced civilizations. But I have never been more grateful to walk away from a fight. The humans are small, weak, and primitive. But they do not know how to quit. And that makes them the most dangerous species I have ever encountered. On Earth, humans looked up at the stars and wondered what came next. They had won their first battle. But they knew it was only the beginning. The galaxy had learned that humanity would not kneel. Now it was time to show them what humans could do standing tall.